Greetings, ladies and mentalgets, and welcome to this latest episode of Tales from Outer Space, where I take a space-related story from around the internet and read it out loud for your enjoyment. All the relevant links are down below. Please don't forget to do the usual YouTube gumph, because if you don't, the nanite swarms will steal your other sock. But more importantly, as always, I hope that you enjoy. I'd quickly like to thank the following Tier 5 patrons and channel members for supporting the channel: Datamagnet and Bob the Dragon. Thank you very much. Story number 1. All Systems Diplomacy, Fun and Games with Temporal Physics, written by Apophis Pegasus. CERN, Geneva, Switzerland, Earth. So as you can tell, while it is more than possible to slow time up or speed it down in localized areas, due to the Bush lullaby constant, actual time travel is all but impossible, requiring monumental amounts of energy for even a short trip in any direction, not to mention the partial annihilation and extreme heat generation. The sitting group of scientists groaned collectively at the far Asian scientist's ending lecture. The sound of ripping paper and cries of anguish filled the room as scientists ditched their plans. My lottery numbers! That goes killing Hitler. You're telling me I was gonna go get Martin Luther after lunch. Father Ahern looked up to see the Protestant members of the audience glaring at him, smirking. He stared back as an Italian neighbor unsuccessfully tried to shush him. What? No! We got something to lose. The far Asian scientists, still on the podium, looked on in confusion, usually upon being taught of the impossibilities of time travel, whether it be to a class of university freshmen or to experienced scholars of newly enlightened species. It was relief, happiness that the timelines could not be changed, let alone weaponized. These humans, they didn't seem to be disappointed that the timeline couldn't be changed. They had already picked targets. She felt a hand on her shoulder and looked to find a smiling diplomat by her side. Don't worry, the diplomat said. Eventually they'll get over it and realize that it's for the best. Eventually, in the meantime, how about some refreshments? The scientist allowed herself to quietly be led off the stage by the still smiling diplomat, mind in a daze as the voices swelled in argument. 2 weeks later. Boom! An explosion rocked the western wing of the complex. Radiation alarms blared as scientists, security, and administrators streamed out of their offices and workstations towards the exits, while CVRN teams hurried towards the source of the alarm. Smoke streamed out of Lab 81 as 5 soot-clad scientists exited the laboratory, coughing, only to run into Ashta Venter, a far Asian supervisor with a drink of water. Dropping her cup in disbelief, she stared at the scientists, then at the smoking lamp, then at the scientists. The scientist took a step back as she approached them, solid red eyes blazing. What did you do? All right, explain it to me from the top. 5 scientists shuffled nervously in a line facing the president of CERN, and Ashja Venter. Bucking up, the leftmost of the scientists decided to speak up. We decided to run an experiment. That much is obvious. What kind of experiment? The scientist next to the first one decided to help a colleague and replied, Well, since we heard about the chronal acceleration technology, we thought it'd be interesting to investigate. So we decided to accelerate the decay rate of a couple grams of uranium. A vein pulsed in the president's forehead. You mean you built a nuke? I leave for 5 minutes and they built a spur-damned nuke. Ashta couldn't keep her composure any longer. Her maroon shoulders rose and fell, and her breathing grew heavy as she glowered at the 5 scientists. To their credit, they didn't run away. The third scientist even spoke up, albeit shakily. No, hang on. That's a bit of an exaggeration. Did you use radioactive material? Scientist number 3 looked at the president quizzically. Yes, but Did you release all of its energy over a short period of time? Well, did it explode? That's... son of a bitch, we made a nuke. He turned to the others. We made a nuke, guys. The president's reply was cut off as a low growl emitted from Oshta's throat, scattering the scientists. She marched outside, slamming the door as she went. Peeping out from under a desk, the president fixed the cowering scientists with a stern look. Pressing a button on his desk, he spoke into the mic. Ryan, how's cleanup going? Slightly confused voice responded on the other end. Kinda great, Mr. President. There's no real fallout here. Just a bunch of lead nanoparticles. We might actually even be able to finish before the day's up. Glad to hear it. Taking his finger off the button, the president sighed, looking back at the group of sheepish scientists. He decided that the easiest course of action. After all, it's not like they contaminated anything. And it was almost lunchtime. Never do this again! Not without notifying me. Are we clear? The scientists all nodded vigorously. Streaming out of the office, they whispered amongst themselves. We're, totally gonna publish this though, right? All Systems Science University, University Prime. Dude, you remember to calibrate the dilation contraction matrix. Relax, man, everything's ready. The two human students attached their homemade devices to the left wrists, clicking into place as the device activated, blue lights blinking as they hummed to life. Clear on the path? Yeah. Set the chronal accelerators to 2000-1 seconds. Go in, get that stuck-up Padukian's jewels, and get out. Starting to feel kinda bad for her. Come on, man. We've been over this. All that happens is that she needs to go home and get new ones forged. We'll throw the old ones under the lost and found. No harm done. And while she's gone, no royal guard shoving us aside in the hallway. No random dorm searchers, all snitching our inventions out to the dean. It's gonna be great. Well, when you put it like that, just remember the field projectors are a couple inches in front of us, so make sure you only touch the jewels. The two humans activated the chronal accelerators, and around them the world slowed to a crawl. They looked at each other with glee. On 3. 1, 2... End of story. Story number 2. Jury-rigged, written by Lane Miller. Wilson grinned at his brothers. It had been hard fought, but they'd managed to convince the aliens that had hired them that they always keep sibling units together. Unfortunately, that also meant sharing living space like they had as children. But there were worse things, like being in space without anyone familiar at all. Although if Wallace kept borrowing his socks without asking, he might be down a sibling soon. Twins weren't as cool as triplets for playing pranks, but the fecker never returned them. Still, so far space had been pretty sweet, and the pay was really exceptional. He stretched his toes under the blankets along his bunk, listening with half an ear. William and Wallace were arguing again and snorted. That was typical. Soon enough, it was time to get up, though, and after a quick trip to the mess, all three parted ways. Wilson made his way down to engineering for the start of his shift. Being an engineer was way cooler than a code tester or security officer like his brother. Not that he'd say it. He left the fighting for the other two, mostly. Working with alien tech was the best, though. He'd just been put on an experimental project, actually. Most species used FTL travel to move ships, and was extremely fast. But, what if that shift could be instantaneous and use less energy? Folding the fabric of space-time had been theorized and mapped out, but no one had yet to be able to get the thing to work. That's where Wilson came in. He was just the human for the job. It didn't matter to him that his job was technically to build or help design what the lead scientist on the project wanted. That wasn't how things actually happened. How things actually worked was you slapped some flux and some duct tape on the thing, and then you tested it until it actually turned on. Then you made it all pretty. And hopefully soon, if you could figure this thing out, they could visit Earth whenever they wanted. and then he could buy more beer. Well, and socks, but mostly beer. The food on the ship wasn't great, but it was edible. But all the aliens seemed to view alcohol drinking with horror, and no amount of asking had gotten him some. Maybe the next project would be to make the food synthesizer spit out whiskey. He mused, still fussing with the inner circuitry. Dell was exasperated and despondent. This was gonna cost him a fortune. They did not quite believe the rule that said that humans must be supervised at all times. They had met 3 of the beings as said of triplets, which was apparently very rare for humans. They were one of the first galactic ships to have them on board as a crew. They had a fierce reputation as a species already, but Dell couldn't see it. Small and fleshy, they were immediately very social with the crew, although the diet they kept made Dell wince. What creature needed that much sucrose in one meal? Still, that seemed level-headed, and without any of the strange behavior that had been gossiped about. Dell looked at the flashing sirens and felt the claxtons of alarms vibrate in his chitin of its exoskeleton. By grill's tusks, they were paying for that oversight. Somehow, the one who worked in engineering, designation Wilson, had been messing with the experimental travel device. Apparently, he'd gotten it to function, and he turned it on, ripping them from their current trajectory and into the Milky Way galaxy instead, while also leaving behind most of their engines. There was clear safety protocols even when regularly traveling in space for this sort of thing. But the most infuriating thing of all was when asked, the human had not even known how he got the thing to work, stating that he just changed a bunch of stuff with a small metal clip, a method he referred to as a MacGyver, and hit the button. And it didn't work, so he hit the experimental device with a hammer. Dell shuddered upon reading this, visions of imploding universe growing even in their brain. And then pressed the button, and it worked. So Captain Dell was not only going to have to deal with repairs, but they didn't even figure out how the stupid thing worked in the process. What sort of idiot goes around pressing random buttons? End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed, and if you do, please consider supporting the author, even by popping over and leaving a thumbs up or a nice comment, just to show your appreciation for the story. However, if you wish to support this channel, there are links down below which will help immensely. I will see you all in the next one, and until then, I hope that you have a fantastic day. Cheers.